Are you married or in a committed relationship looking for real advice on having love and enriching your relationship? You are in the right place. Welcome to The Couples Expert with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hello and welcome back to the Couples Expert podcast. I have with me today Jim Thomas. Jim is a good friend of mine and has been on the show a couple of times. He must be good if that's the case, because this, I think, is his third appearance. Jim is an EFT therapist, supervisor, an all-around good guy. He is going to be talking with us today about social media and some of the pitfalls that can occur by people chatting online and sometimes getting themselves into a relationship that they don't expect. We've titled the podcast Power Possibilities and the Pitfalls of Connection. This is indeed a very important topic, and with what just recently happened with Facebook and some of the breaches that have been going on, I think it is a timely podcast, that's for sure. So without further ado, let me introduce Jim to all of you guys, and I want you to really pay attention to the things he has to say, because his insights are ones that really can make a significant difference in every single one of your relationships. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I was telling people in the introduction that it's fun to have you, coming back, because we get to sort of grow together with each other and talk about all the different changes in our lives. And so often I think this topic is so relevant because when we speak of the internet, and one of the things that I mentioned was this whole fiasco with Facebook and the data breach and how that all... Million. Yeah, I think that's right. That's right. And what always echoes in my head is the concept of what's out there stays out there. So that's a little scary.
It's on the dark web, even if you think you deleted it, right? Yeah,
that's right. So what we had...
what it reminds me when you said that. Did you grow up with the fear of your permanent record? I grew up with
yes.
Adults and teachers would say, "You be careful, that's going to go on your permanent record."
Right.
And we didn't realize there wasn't really a permanent record.
Right.
Now there is.
It's a real permanent record.
Now there is. Out in virtual land. Everything you ever did is out there. Right.
Right. And truthfully, I was cleaning out my closet the other day and I came across a couple of hard drives and I go, oh my God, that looks awful what I had out there. And that's out there. So
now people compute in the cloud. This is where we're going, where everything will be up on the cloud because you can have a smaller device and it's faster, and we have our lives and we have this record of our lives now.
Right. And sometimes that's good to look back on. Sometimes as we were talking earlier, the 8 spots come in.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yes. Oh.
Anyway,
well, yeah, so back, and I agree with you. We end up growing together, and hopefully the folks that are part of our conversation through that's the irony of it, right? That people are listening right now. Hi out there. We're glad you're listening. Part of what Stuart and I are trying to do, I think, is have a conversation where some useful and maybe some original thoughts emerge and some perspectives that are helpful for you. We're all together doing this because of this virtual reality that we can talk and you can listen to it later, and that some of the pros, right, that this virtual reality allows us to connect with people in different ways and access information in different ways. And podcasts didn't exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Right. And part of the pros for me, I always reflect back on people that I've known in my lifetime, and particularly people who are socially isolated or living in areas where there isn't a whole lot of engaging ideas being talked about in the community. And now with the onset of the internet and social media, you now have access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year to talk about anything you want to talk about with thousands and thousands of people. And I think that is such a powerful thing. And the dialogue that for a lot of people that's happened recently is saying, is it a true connection? And I really believe it is. whether or not you're seeing someone face-to-face physically. And now we do see each other face-to-face because of video. Now we can really connect with people in a significant way that can absolutely change the nature of how we see ourselves and our world.
Right. I think you're right. And the research supports that FaceTime and Skype and these things where we can already connect just through voice. And when we add that I can see you, we get pretty proximate experience of being physically present with each other. We see this in like therapists that are doing online therapy, and swear by it because it's, more convenient for the couple, and they feel like they can get a really good sense of the person because they can both see and hear them.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Before You Tie the Knot, 12 Essential Conversations. Planning a wedding and a future together can be stressful, and the couples expert is here to give you a little bit of relief. Whether it's now or in the future, the decision to marry is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. We don't know what we don't know, so I've produced a 12-week course for you and your partner called Before You Tie the Knot, 12 Essential Conversations to Have Before You Marry. There isn't a lot of premarital training and education out there, so I've created 12 modules that address the challenges you and your partner are likely to face as you enter into married life. This course is taken at your pace. There's no time pressure, and I've included some fun challenges and bonus exercises for you and your partner to explore and learn together. I'll be lending support as you go through the course by live Q&A sessions and discussions in a Facebook group exclusively for those of you going through the program. Before You Tie the Knot covers many of the issues and discussions that couples need to have before they get married, included family planning, finances, work-life integration, spirituality, and more. Go to www.thecouplesexperts.com for Before You Tie the Knot and find out what you need to know for a successful and happy marriage.
I wanted to say something about what you were saying that I think is essential to our conversation. And that was really powerful the way you said it. We now have access to more information. We can access a podcast like this. It's going to help me explore relationships and my connection to myself, to my partner, my friends, loved ones, community. And I can go be in community and I can connect with people who are struggling with a topic or want to learn about something. And we have this sort of monkey mind, that can be easily distracted and goes after the thing that's the most shiny, or maybe the thing that's the most scary, or the most creates like a little bit of panic in us or something. And this recognition that there's a lot of things to choose out there. This is conscious couples connection, right? And I'm asking myself this, right? Because I go in and out on this. How conscious am I of where I go to have those discussions? Am I going and finding like a podcast series about a topic that will enrich and feed my soul, or put some interesting, useful ideas into my head, or open up my heart, or, help me connect to something bigger than myself, something I could spiritually connect with? Or am I just going down a rabbit's hole out of reactivity? I call it the internet reactive rabbit hole, where just kind of following the trail of links and things. And now I'm listening to something that's not enlivening or enhancing or connecting. It's me and a bunch of people just being frustrated about something, and we're venting, and now we're getting into an argument, or I'm avoiding relationship. I'm on the internet avoiding reality. Or flirtations with somebody because it's virtual and it doesn't really count. And suddenly those flirtations are starting to mean something to me. I want to get back online and flirt some more with that old high school boyfriend or girlfriend, but nothing's going to come of it.
So you think.
Right. So this consciousness of like never before, that the human, think about our ancestors on the savannah, or the steppes of Russia or something, or out in the plains of Mongolia or something, that they did not have this plethora not only choices, but why is our data important on Facebook? Why do they want us on Facebook so long? Because the longer we're on Facebook, somebody can sell us ads. That's the most overt reason. But what's coming out from this Cambridge Analytica thing is data about us so that they can track and manipulate spending habits and shape our consciousness like to their advantage. And so I'm on the internet, and I ask myself often, what I'm doing on the internet now, am I consciously choosing to do something that might be enlivening, enhancing? I'm reaching out to an old friend. I'm sending a loving message to my wife. I'm checking in with my son or daughter, or I'm listening to a podcast that's helping me, get new information. Or am I just reading, reactive post about the latest thing that just happened in the political sphere or something, and feeding my fears or feeding my, think about that movie, The Matrix. It's sort of like, are we in some way kind of in the Matrix?
Right. And if we start throwing in this whole, and I don't want to get into a whole political discussion here, but when we start bringing the term fake news into the mix, and what does that really mean?
Right.
Fake news, fake desire, fake interests. Mm-hmm. If someone really is able to have the information that they need to be able to influence me in basically any way that they choose to, and then what you're talking about is, do I really in some ways do the same thing when I go out there and I just look for the next rush?
Yeah,
the next. It really is about a rush, and when we start talking about, I don't know why I sort of thought about this as you were talking, but one of the things I remembered when Donald Trump became president is the number of people that I saw online who said they couldn't get out of bed. Mm. And the impact that had on some people from a positive perspective, regardless of your political persuasion, how we got influenced by that, so that those types of things become more important than the person-in-person relationships I have at home, which I can understand getting upset about what happened if you don't believe certain things, but to be impacted in such a big way, more so than the relationship you have with the people in your day-to-day life, it's an interesting concept.
Well, sure. And one thing you're pointing out is the dopamine rush of the search, the seeking,
right.
this hormone chemical that makes us want to go seek. Otherwise, we would just lay in bed. That the internet and phones and all that just feed. It's that recent study that fake news travels some 6 times faster than real news. It's shocking and or confirms a bias. It feeds an emotional bias so we want to share it. But also, to take a step back for all of us and go back some generations, like to the World War II generation. Pearl Harbor happens, and they first hear about it. Picture yourself. You're hearing on the radio, the naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii is under attack. And then gradually starts to come in reports, about what's happening. And then on the radio, you hear the next day a short speech by your president who says, December, a day that will live in infamy. And we don't receive, all of us, if we just close our eyes and imagine, we don't see it on TV. We don't have 24-hour cable news, right? We don't get pictures of the damage at Pearl Harbor for 6 or 7 days. We have 6 or 7 days to process, and we experience it with images that we can conjure up that are manageable for us. Then we get pictures, and we all kind of go through that together, and we talk more about it with each other because we don't have this virtual community to go react to. Now let's fast forward to, say, the Cuban Missile Crisis or Kennedy getting assassinated. Now more people are saying, I remember where I was the day that, if Kennedy got shot. And then I pretty soon was at home or at work or in the streets watching it on TV. And I saw the newscaster, I think it was Walter Cronkite, who started to choke up. The president is dead. And now we're watching on TV, but it's a pretty more, staid kind of a little more emotionally restrained, and we have a few days, and we all process together. We're all watching the same images of the funeral and the son saluting the carriage and Jackie in black, and we're all mourning together. But it's a little more intense because now we have it on TV. Then flash forward to the First Persian Gulf War and Nightline, and we're seeing the explosions, and we're watching it on CNN News. But it's still not a lot. Now it's cable news. Somebody's telling us how to think about it. We can pick the channel and now it's on the internet. And now 9/11 happens, and we see the image of the towers falling over and over and over and over again. And this is an intense increase in the amount of information and shock and trouble and pain. So one of the things about Facebook, we think there's a phenomenon. Well, one is the phenomenon of, seeing other people's lives mostly presented in positive ways. So a lot of people, we get depressed. Like, I'm not in Ireland on vacation, having just had a grandbaby and having just got married and having just got promoted and having just won lotto. But there's another piece they're finding out, which is it's also very intense to hear. So if you have 300, 400, 500, 600 friends, which is not uncommon for some people, right? 700 friends, and people are posting like, I do have breast cancer. Mm-hmm. My dad just died suddenly. Right. We're also getting reminded so often of how fragile we are.
And we, you know what, Jim, I want to add one more, because you're talking about negative things, but I think I think the intensity
I'm talking about the intensity of it.
Right. The intensity also of saying my son just got murdered.
Right.
And then this bombardment is what you're really talking about.
Yes. The intensity of it. I think that's the medium is the medium, and it's something we all have to figure out how it's impacting us. I don't want to say that there's also advantages to seeing the abject poverty in a situation that maybe we wouldn't have seen, or to realize it's what do we do with it? And how are our brains and our hearts handling it? And how are relationships being impacted, since we're on conscious couples counseling? How is it impacting our earthly relationships with the people we exist in physical reality with more of the time? Versus this virtual reality. Like you started this part of the conversation with that beautiful image of now people get laid up in bed or want to throw things at each other, and they defriend people because we're sort of flooded by our political differences now, or our social differences.
I can't tell you how many couples that I have seen over the last few months that the biggest crisis is they were pissed at each other and they unfriended their partner.
Yeah.
And the horror that created in that relationship.
Right.
The humiliation, all these people knowing it, and how disrespectful that is, and what it all means, and the meaning that has been attached to this. You're valuable if you're in my community here, but you're not that valuable if you're not, or if I throw you out. Yeah. What does that really suggest about how you feel about me?
Right, I just rejected you or abandoned you.
Right.
It's painful. Or somebody who takes a shot at you on social media about, like your political beliefs, and those people are debating, and it's hurting. It still hurts inside. And the friends watching it are like, oh, I don't like seeing my friends fight like this. And there's a plethora of this intensity.
And then the real personal stuff that goes on in relationships, when that is just outed publicly, not just to, your friends, a small group, but someone has an affair, and now that's out there for everybody to see, including, and this is where it gets really interesting, work associates.
Work associates, yeah.
And then how many people lose respect in their business life because of their personal life being so exposed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I think that we've lost this whole concept of within a family, within a relationship, there's privacy.
Yeah. Well, as you go back to the Facebook thing, How did we ever delude ourselves into thinking we had privacy with Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter? Like, that's how you started this conversation. This is all in the record, guys. It's our permanent record. We can't expect any privacy. And it doesn't mean that the NSA or something is watching our every move or something, but it is different how public our lives have become. And there can be some real gains in that. I go back to like the afternoon talk show things of like Montel and Oprah and stuff when they first happened, and people were going on and saying, I'm bulimic, and what's bulimia, and that's good. And there's a real good in like, it's easier to find out that other people struggle with something, or come on and say, my wife and I, we had an affair, but we worked it out, or I was abused as a child, and I'm a famous person that you wouldn't imagine was abused as a child, and now you don't feel so crazy because you got abused. And I do think there's many, many, many positives in the connection, but I just punctuate this first part of our conversation. I think it behooves all of us to ask ourselves, what's the emotional sort of psychic, in the psyche, in our cognitive minds, how hooked are we in it to our phones? Like, how often do we get our phones out at dinner? How often do we text and drive, or get on the internet while we're driving? When we're on vacation, this wonderful travel agent article, I think it was in the Times a few months ago, Americans, you're ruining your vacation. And the person who's been a travel writer for some decades said, in the last 4 years, I've seen this thing where now at the Paris cafe, people aren't talking to each other. They're on their phones. On the beach, they're on their phones. In the jungle in Borneo, they're on their phones. And it's like, put your phones down.
People like you and I who talk about date nights, talk about having a date night. I was out on a date with my wife, and there was a family sitting right next to us. It was husband, wife, 3 kids. And I looked at my watch because what they were doing was everyone was on their phone. And it was about 10 minutes before one word got spoken.
Yeah.
How horrible.
That's not good.
No. And then we wonder why we have sleep challenges when we get on Facebook and we do these things right before bed, or on vacations, as you're talking about. Vacations are supposed to recharge us.
So when I'm doing seminars, trainings, and certainly with my couples and families that come in for therapy, I am very clear that I want you all to get rid of your screens and not even have your cell phones visible, so we can attend to each other. And maybe at break or something, we can talk to each other instead of getting on our phones. This comes out of research that's been replicated that indicates that if a phone is present and we can see it in our conversation, we lose about 40% of our ability or capacity to empathize and really attend to what the other person's saying. There's also the same research indicates that we'll keep our conversation superficial, because the theory is at some level we know that we could easily get derailed, and I don't want to be hurt by that, so I'm going to keep it surfacey. We know we have good indications that if you take too many pictures on vacation, for example, or you're videoing your kid's ballet performance, that by trying to record things, even typing notes in a laptop. Now, some people with struggles typing but for the average person, like typing notes versus handwriting them, you don't record it as well. So when we immediately put our experience into the cloud, is what I'm going to suggest, we don't have the experience as deeply. And when the cloud or the phone or something is there to distract us, we're not as in our experience. So how can I, in my relationship with you as a family member, a child, as a partner, a friend, a sibling, have these phones, which are becoming increasingly the place that this happens, but also our laptop or desktop or our TV, be a tool and a resource for connection to help us stay in touch with each other, to amplify our connection. We are a family that, has a cell phone basket, and at 6:00, our cell phones go in the basket, and we stay off our cell phones for the rest of the night. We don't have cell phones when we go out for dinner. And maybe I don't take my phone to take pictures on vacation, even though it's a great camera, because I know I'm going to check all my work emails because I got my phone. I want to vacate my work responsibilities So I buy a little digital camera if I have the resources for $200, and I use that to take my pictures. And I leave the phone at home, or I turn off the email app and I let my work know, don't text me. I'm vacating my work responsibilities. This is a big one too. We're finding out some 40 to 50, some surveys, 60% of Americans say they do work when they're on vacation. You know what I say to that, Stuart?
Yeah, I have a feeling
You're not
I do.
on vacation.
Right.
That's not vacation. That's working.
I found myself addicted to this. I really did, because what I knew was going on, I became obsessed at one point with checking my Facebook likes. How many people were doing that? And then my phone would be on my bedside. And even if I wasn't watching about it, I noticed myself glancing at it. So what I ended up doing, which saved everything for about 60 days, I refused to bring it into the bedroom when I went to bed. My whole sleep cycle changed.
There you go.
To where I could sleep. I was more refreshed. And there was less anxiety about life in general.
There you go.
That's like a really good example, I think, of exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and let's tether that to another piece of research related to sleep and stuff, that we know if we're on one of these blue screens, these laptops, computers and stuff, to agree TV, kind of depends a bit on how close you are to the TV, but TV too, or a phone, within an hour or so going to bed, we are impacting our sleep because we impact our circadian rhythm. The brain is getting tricked and doesn't know. And if we have the phone next to the bed or in bed with us, we believe, our best guess is that our mammalian, like sort of limbic system brain, it now has a relationship to the phone. And literally, like I had a friend just the other day, I got up and I'd gotten a text at like 3:30 that just said, nope. 3:30 in the morning. 3:30 in the morning, it says, nope, N-O-P-E. So I'm like, Bob, what's up? And he goes, I don't know. I was sleeping as sound as a log, but I do have my cell phone in bed. I bet I was sleep texting. I do that.
So sleep texting?
Well, here's the research. We're finding.
Oh my gosh.
Teenagers spending some 9 hours, 10 hours a day on their phone, they will take their phone to bed. And there's a subset of them that they text in the middle of the night and they don't remember it. This is the intensity of the relationship we can have with the phone. And the simplest thing I would say to couples and people and individuals, families, is my relationship to this gadget becoming a distraction? I'm escaping into it. It's a distraction and annoyance to my family. That's like the first level. Then there's, no, I'm really starting to get a relationship with it that supplants. And, do you feel like you get criticized, that people get angry and annoyed with you? You get annoyed with them, that they give you this feedback. You sometimes feel guilty about how much you're on your devices, computer, that you got to play video games all night. There's another version, or you're on porn. I mean, this is all part of virtual reality, right?
Right.
And that I make promises to use less. And we start getting into that realm of this can become such a compulsion and habit. And we're habitual creatures. And it's just too damn easy, folks. It's too damn easy to get on the internet. It's too damn easy to spend your life texting and having virtual connection and ignore the people right around you. Or I have balance with my devices. I use them to build community, to do some of the things you talked about, Stuart. I use them to access community. I use them to expand my experiences and my resource base. They supplant my relationship with my loved one, because now when I'm on a business trip or they're on a business trip, we FaceTime at night. I don't go and use porn. I flirt with my wife or my husband when we're distant from each other. I use these things to build connection. And I do some sort of inventory of that on a regular basis, because if we don't, and you're on your devices a lot, we're probably giving into that dopamine rush we talked about. And it's probably overall just not a benefit. It doesn't mean it's a crisis. It doesn't mean that the medium itself is the problem. It's just so easy.
And the awareness that you need to have is the key of what you're talking about, is that if you're sitting in bed with your partner and the two of you are on your cell phones, and then you think back at the last time you made love and it's been a while, put down your phones,
Yeah.
to each other and say, could we talk just about our day?
Yes.
Or
If you're, I want to normalize this. You're laying in bed with your partner and some part of you just thinks, I wish we were sort of talking or something, but they're on their iPad. So you turn on the TV. That nagging little ouch or puzzlement, that pain or loneliness is valuable. It's telling you something about what are we doing here? If you're the one on your iPad and your partner's like sighing and says, oh, okay, guess you're going to check your work emails. I'll just go to bed. Listen to that sigh and ask yourself, did I really plan when I met this person that my evenings I would be on my iPad checking work at 10 at night instead of saying, oh, look right over there is the person that's the most important person in my life.
And I think we could go full circle to this dialogue now. So that experience happens. And then you go, oh, I wonder what my old girlfriend is up to.
Right.
And you get online and you get on Facebook, very not planning on anything inappropriate to happen, really just out of curiosity because your partner's all involved with what they're doing. And then you see someone, maybe your old girlfriend, maybe someone else, and you begin to have a conversation, and the conversation is a person-to-person conversation, and that dopamine gets accessed to where you now are excited to talk with them more and more and more.
Right.
And before you know it,
it gets a little intimate. And they
that's
say,
right.
I really, really look forward to our little chats at 11 o'clock at night. And you get a little oxytocin cuddle hormone because your partner hasn't been that nice and appreciative in a long time.
Right. And before you know it, you're now heavily involved in an online affair.
Yep.
And then your marriage potentially is in serious, serious trouble.
Right. And then when your partner calls you on it, oh, it's just a virtual thing. It was just a flirtation. You misunderstood. It's no big deal. And now they're freaking out because, boy, it's sure, I'm reading the text. I'm reading the messages you sent. I see how much affection or attention this person gave you or you gave. Right. Or it ends up being a sexual affair online with, or you lead to a meetup or something.
And before you know it, it's heavily involved. And now let's go back, because all it might have taken for all of that to go away is when your partner is checking their email, you turn to them and say, could you do me a favor and put it down? I really just want to have a conversation with you. And all that other stuff potentially may not have occurred. Not saying it wouldn't have, but the possibilities of you saying, hey, I'm feeling lonely, now changes everything. And now you have a person-to-person conversation with an emotional connection, and that cuddle hormone is about the two of you, not someone else. When you start thinking about this, it just gets sort of sad because there is this two ends of the same spectrum where it's a wonderful tool. I'm just reinforcing something you were saying earlier. It's a wonderful tool of connection, or it could be a disaster of disconnection if we don't take control of it.
Yeah, I don't take control of you. It's in some ways similar to, if you're a coffee drinker, are you really deciding to have coffee in the morning? And, you've gotten used to it and you need that little boost. If you, a cigarette smoker and your body's crying out for nicotine, so you smoke cigarettes. If you're used to driving to the grocery store, but you could walk to the grocery store, it takes some effort to decide to walk to the grocery store, maybe for your health or something, to grab a little bit of, a bag of food and walk home. And boy, the internet and the phone and all these virtual things are so often paths of least resistance. There's a lot of economy in action. It doesn't take much for me to go into a place where I'm highly stimulated, distracted, aggravated, or excited, or, so that takes conscious effort because these things become strong habits. I get used to picking up my phone and seeing if somebody has liked my post on Facebook, or I get used to And I'm in this too. I'm not speaking as a person that's above it. I wrestle with this and have to do this inventory on a regular basis. And I can be impacted by the use of other people. It's neutral in and of itself, but I just think we all have to be gentle with ourselves and make conscious efforts around this because of the bombardment, ubiquity of it, and the ease at which we can get distracted by it. So I have these things that I see couples and families deciding to do that I now think are good advice. And one I mentioned was the cell phone basket, an agreement to like get off our phones by a certain time. And I think that having a day of the week, let's take Sunday and rest and just
electronic free day.
Yeah, for our relationship, to put a limit on and say, I'm not going to work beyond a certain amount of hours. There's some countries where there's laws against people working virtually outside of the work hours, and companies that will say, we don't want you doing that because we want you to take care of ourselves. Now I get it. Out there in the corporate, some of you are going, Jim, that's so unrealistic. It's expected of me. But can we start to chip off an hour at the beginning of the day and an hour at the end of the day and reclaim that and become more efficient in our work time? Because a lot of us are reverse telecommuting and stuff. We're sitting in the office and we get distracted for an hour. We could have got some work done. Now we're doing that work at home when we could be watching a sunset or walking the dogs or talking to a neighbor or being with our partner. I really am a strong believer in the vacating your work responsibilities when you go on vacation. And so think about whether this smartphone is going to be a distraction. And now that they take such great pictures, it's very tempting to take this phone on vacation. But be honest with yourself. If you're a person and you have that, Samsung Galaxy 9 or the new iPhone, you're going to look at work emails. Don't bring the phone. Give yourself the week without that. And then the other is to check in with each other and ask, so how is my relationship with devices to you? And you ask me, how is your relationship to devices for me? And are these things that are available to us at least neutral in our relationship, if not enhancing and enlivening our relationship? And where they're distracting from our relationship, let's treat this like we would if alcohol was becoming a problem, or workaholism was becoming a problem, or anger was becoming a problem. It's impacting us one way or the other. And anybody who says it's not, that uses their devices a lot, it's a form of denial.
One of the reasons my wife and I, when we vacation, go on cruises a lot is because there's no internet, there's no television, there's no phone, and then it becomes a real vacation.
Yeah.
And that's really what I encourage all of you to listen to what Jim just shared, because that is the answer to having an emotional connection, because you need those downtimes to really be downtimes. I mean, we all are trying to fit in things, and we need times where we don't have to fit anything in, that is just about the two of you.
Well, let's talk about that too, right? Because how many of us are old enough to remember when fax machines came? And then suddenly I faxed you, you haven't responded. I mean, people used to give you the grace of like a day to respond or two. You had to call them back or you had to write them a letter. Then email came, I emailed you. Then text came. And now you could text me, you can message me on LinkedIn, you can Facebook me. And what all of this did was fill our busy back soon, the busy thing that can happen where we get into the tyranny of the urgent, as Covey used to say. And this sense of like, if we're busy, it's like a badge nowadays. We brag about how busy we are. The busy things I keep doing, and I'm talking to myself too right now. Was I meant to be this busy, to always have something to go to, always have something I'm commenting on, always be liking something? And then this book I read recently about the organized mind, that this research that you are using mental energy when you decide whether to like or not like something, and it does take energy. And now the funny thing is, it's better if you're going to be on Facebook to be active than it is to just read people's posts, right? It could be depressing if you don't engage. But it also has a very real impact if you're getting into arguments and things and seeing a lot of division. And it's like, how can we take a breath? I think that our devices, the internet, this virtual reality really pulls for this ongoing struggle we have. And how much am I a human doing versus a human experiencing or being? And to be constantly engaged all the time on a heightened sense of dopamine rush, hey, this thing called life is going to pass us all by. On the other hand, these things can be enhancing and engaging and interesting, and we can meet people and talk to people all around the world and create different friendships and find out that there are other people who struggle with bulimia. I'm not alone, or there's other people who had an alcoholic parent, and I can talk to them because I can't make it to an Al-Anon meeting or something. And there's other people who care about string theory, and it's not about cheese, right? It's about physics, and I can get into the nerdy group and get all excited about string theory, and people don't make fun of me. There's amazing possibilities, and with those possibilities come these pitfalls. And you know, the people listening know that some people are listening and going, oh yeah, it's taken over, or it's taken over somebody I love. And how do we talk about it? And talk about it in a way where we can turn back to each other and let this be a tool and an enhancement, not a barrier or an escape.
You know, Jim, we're just about out of time, and I want to just thank you so much for coming back on and to engaging in this conversation, because it's such an important one, and one that I don't think people talk enough about.
No, I don't. It's new. It's a new struggle, and we take 10, 15 years or so to catch up and go like, look at TV, you know, in the 70s going, right. Wow, TV's having an impact on our consciousness. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Now it's this. Can I make a confession? You know?
Yes, sure. And then we'll go. True confession.
Well, there's a part of me that will want to see how many people listen to the podcast.
Right.
And now I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go look. I'm just going to put it out there. I hope it was useful to someone. If it was useful to you, thank goodness. And I'm glad. And I
take your own advice, right?
Yeah. What's it matter? If 20 people listen or 200 or 2,000, we've had our experience. I like talking to you about these things. I hope it's helpful to somebody out there in their relationship to themselves and loved ones in their community. And for that, I'm grateful. And I let go of that part of me that's want to go get my dopamine rush of like, ooh, 180 people listened. Wow, I don't really need that. That's not helpful to me. I'll let that go.
That's a good thing to let go, but the add-on to that is I hope lots of people listen because the message is so valuable.
It is the message. It's the message.
Thank you again, Jim, for coming on the Couples Expert Podcast. All right, take care, guys, and we'll see all of you next time, and please stay connected.
Thank you for listening. This episode has ended, but your journey continues. Head over to www.thecouplesexperts.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. Enjoyed this episode? Why not hit subscribe now and never miss an episode?